Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to do a presentation about the death of the Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. So, a little bit about me. My name is Sydney Rimmer. I'm a double major in communication studies and political science, and I chose this topic because I believe that there are several perspectives to explore. This topic affects more countries than just the US and Iran, and typically the US is pretty egocentric, so it's interesting to look at how other countries see this, and it can contrast how Iran was previously handled by the US and different administrations, such as the Trump administration versus the Obama administration. So, in case you all forgot what I look like, as we are no longer face-to-face this semester, I put in a little picture of myself. But getting into it, we have to look at what happened. So if you're not familiar, the U.S. killed a top Iranian military commander, General Qasem Soleimani, in an overnight drone strike outside of the Baghdad International Airport. So the Iraqi militia commander, Abdu, also died in the attack, and things were already a bit tense, so here's some background on that. In May 2018, Trump had backed out of the nuclear deal and reinstated economic sanctions against Iran, and then Iran fell into a recession. In May 2019, the U.S. tightened sanctions targeting Iran's oil exports, and Iran began counterpressure. So, why did Trump order this attack on the general in the first place? Soleimani was plotting imminent attacks on American diplomats, military personnel, and in the process of targeting American civilians. He already killed several Americans, and it's believed that Soleimani had intentions to blow up multiple U.S. embassies, not limited to the Baghdad location. So Trump reiterated his suggestion that Soleimani was found to be in the process of targeting Americans. I quote, "Soleimani was plotting imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel, but we caught him in the act and terminated him. We did it because the way they were looking to blow up our embassy, not just the embassy in Baghdad." Trump and the National Security Team also desired to reestablish deterrence from the Islamic Republic and assert American military dominance. So here's a little background on General Soleimani. Soleimani was in charge of expanding Iran's military influence in the greater Middle East, aided in keeping Syria's brutal dictator Bashar Assad in power, and overseeing militia groups in Iraq that violently repressed protesters. So, some consequences of this assassination. Immediately consequences that we saw were Iraq's response, which was to launch missiles into U.S. bases in Iraq. This wasn't terrible because the regime issued a warning of the strikes ahead of time, therefore there were no casualties. Also, Iran pulled out of the 2015 nuclear accord. So some potential implications we can see in this are that many Americans at the time feared that Iran would launch an attack or even a war on the U.S. So there was a lot of discord going around the internet about World War III memes, as many people thought that there could actually be a world war on the U.S. And finally, Iraq was also a potential threat. The problem with this entire situation, the overall problem was that this was controversial about why the attack was even ordered in the first place and why Congress was not involved. Democrats believe that Trump did this on a whim with no real evidence that the general strike would happen against the U.S. This also furthered the divide between Republicans and Democrats, and there was also the fear of the potential consequences to come. So, how did the Obama administration handle Iran before Trump came into office? The nuclear deal. So Iran had agreed to limit its sensitive nuclear activities and allow international inspectors in return for lifting the crippling economic sanctions. So, on January 17, 2016, the day after 4 American detainees were released, $400 million worth in varying currency was sent in a jumbo jet to Tehran. Soon after, $1.3 billion in cash was sent. This cash-only transaction was very controversial. The money was apparently said to have been partial payment of an outstanding claim by Iran for U.S. military equipment that was never delivered, with the cash-only payment used as leverage to ensure the release of detainees. We also have to note the $5.7 billion. Obama officials pushed the U.S. Treasury to let Iran convert the equivalent of $5.7 billion of funds held in Oman's Bank of Muscat from rivals into dollars into euros. This required a special license by the U.S. Treasury, which was granted in February of 2016, but it was never disclosed to Congress or the American people. This was not used for innocent uses. Our State Department characterizes Iran as the #1 terrorist supporting state on earth. Every dollar it gets from the U.S. has an ultimate use that is highly questionable, which is the reason the U.S. imposed sanctions in the first place. So, was the Obama administration paying off Iran and potentially, accidentally, terrorist funding? The Washington Times national security correspondent Bill Gertz in February of this year reported that some of the $1.7 billion that Obama administration officially handed over to Iranians had ended up in the hands of terrorist groups. No one knows how much of the $5.7 billion that Obama allowed Iran to access also went to terroristic activities. The Obama administration signed a deal that not only did it ended the Tehran's nuclear program, but merely postponed it for a decade, all while doing nothing about its terrorist activities. And Obama helped finance this under the table. This leads me to go into the different leading styles. It's common that we all know Teddy Roosevelt's leading style is to speak softly and carry a big stick. After seeing how Trump and Obama handled Iran, it is clear that Trump speaks loud and carries a big stick, whereas Obama speaks softly and carries a small stick. Trump had immediately used militant force against Iran, whereas Obama paid off Iran. I would now like to look into how Iranians viewed General Soleimani. So there are varying views of the general amongst the Iranian people. Many are deeply upset by his death, which is what we typically saw amongst the media here in the US. However, there are just as many people that are very glad to see him go. However, even the Iranians who dislike the general are upset about how the U.S. affronted Iran, as the Iranians are very nationalistic. I would now like to look into those in support of the assassination and those opposed. In support are obviously the Republicans, as they tend to stand behind Donald Trump. Also, the Israeli Prime Minister came out strongly in support of the assassination. He said, and I quote, "Just as Israel had the right of self-defense, the United States has exactly the same right. Qasem Soleimani is responsible for the death of American citizens and many other innocent people. He was planning on more such attacks. President Trump deserves all the credit for acting swiftly, forcefully, and decisively. Israel stands with the United States in its just struggle for peace, security, and self-defense." Saudi Arabia is also in support. Saudi Crown Prince did not immediately respond to the Soleimani's death. However, according to reports last year, his top aides had previously discussed plans to assassinate the Iranian general as well. David Patrikakos, author of the book Nuclear Iran, said that, "Behind the scenes, I expect people like bin Salman will all be encouraging Trump to continue with this and hope he strikes Iran again and again. The Saudis would love to see an escalation to this." Those in opposition, including Democrats, Iran, and Iraq. These are quite obvious. The Iraqi Prime Minister said the assassination of an Iraqi military commander who holds an official position is considered aggression on Iraq, and the liquidation of leading Iraqi figures or those from a brotherly country on Iraqi soil is a massive breach of sovereignty. So I would then like to explore the solutions and next steps. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a resolution 224 to 194 restricting Trump's ability to launch a strike on Iran without congressional approval. This is for better or for worse because we could be in a situation where time is of the essence. But basically, at this point, it's just a waiting game to see if Iran will ever truly retaliate on the U.S. itself. I would like to thank you all for bearing with me through this long little PowerPoint and present with you guys my works cited. Thanks.